talking baseball. The man and Bobby fella, the student, the barber, and the newt. They knew 'em all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Now, I should back up on that for a minute. Put me in, Coach. You just went to see John Fogerty, yes?
I did, and it was very, very exciting. I'd never seen him in person before. He's 66 years old and very full of energy. His voice hasn't lost a thing. And for baseball fans, the big deal was he played center field, and he did it with a guitar that looked like a bat made by Louisville Slugger.
And that's been one of your favorite baseball songs for a long time, yeah?
Yeah, it's great. It smells like baseball.
Yeah, it does. It certainly has that feel. Well, I'm happy for you. I'm jealous and hopeful that I get to see him soon because that was it sounded like a great show. So good for you. So as we're talking baseball, because like I said, we talk around a lot of stuff, other things, very important things related to Boys of Summer. But baseball is part of what certainly a big part of the trip too. And we talk about our team, our beloved A's, and where they're at right now. I would have, I think, been happier to have this conversation a week ago.
Yeah, it's been ugly.
When before they started this recent 6-game slide. And we took a look at, I asked you to take a look at a column that was on the athleticsnation.com site, and it's now even picked up more steam after last night's debacle, which brought up the subject of firing manager Bob Geren. What are your thoughts on that right now?
Well, it was a brutal article. I couldn't disagree with it, but it was I guess when you get away from the mainstream press, that's one step below. I guess you're liable to get that kind of frankness.
It's an interesting progression in sports media in general. I don't want to get off topic, but I have personally enjoyed my foray into the team sports blogs because of the fan conversation. There's a lot of garbage to sift through, but there are also very interesting perspectives that I don't think you would get from the traditional journalistic world. So it's a good balance. I certainly look to the traditional sources as well, but you're right. That kind of frankness and passion is something I enjoy.
It was as brutal as it was. I couldn't find anything to fault in it. I my own style is definitely not comfortable with that. I in my entire life, I think I fired one person. But I probably should have fired more than that, or should have been stern with more than that. But it's just a conflict I tend to shy away from.
Yeah, I actually remember you talking about that. I don't know if it was that particular story, but that role for you as I think you described it as being they wanted you to be more of an axeman with Bank of America, correct?
Crocker Bank.
Crocker, okay, and you're being very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
Well, as it relates to Bob Geren, as a fan, I'll say from my standpoint that I've never been a great fan of his, and it's more of a passion based thing that I look at a manager to have some fire, to have some of I guess what I've seen iconically in managers whom I've liked to be able to be that player's guy, but at the same time be able to step back when it's appropriate, and larger than life at times, and absolutely quiet at other times. And Bob Geren strikes me as a guy, and again, a limited perception. I don't get to watch many games, but who is vanilla to a fault. He just doesn't seem to provide much of anything, and that could be good if the clubhouse was solid, and you said, well, look, what he's providing is what that clubhouse is producing, and it just doesn't seem to me that the old. And old by old, I say maybe 5-6 years ago, their last great run when Frank Thomas and Swish were still there and such. that great clubhouse they were known for, that kind of lovable Muppets, I remember they were dubbed as in one place, that doesn't seem to exist anymore. They've seemed to become more of kind of a quiet wasteland almost of a team.
Well, he could he could be Billy Bean's Achilles heel. Um, I I wasn't aware that he was such a good friend of Billy Bean's as he apparently is. But if that's the case, I can understand how difficult it would be to deal with him if you were that good a friend. Um, and Billy Bean has always wanted a guy who would go along with whatever he said.
And that's very difficult based again on the perception of who Billy Bean has been as GM versus what he's become with Bob Geren because of that crossing of the line. That was a large criticism when Bob Geren was hired, was that, yeah, okay, best man, right? That relationship they have in the wedding. And now, is going to go ahead and be the manager of the team. And people wondered, well, will Billy be as harsh or, as necessarily critical as he was of Maka and Howe? And there were quite a few people who felt that he was pretty critical of Maka. And don't forget the one that people go back to, and I know A's fans, we hate to think about it, but we were staring at Wash. We had him as a coach, and now he's doing pretty well down there in Texas,
He's doing very well.
and very very loved in the clubhouse, loved by the fans, and no doubt a brilliant baseball mind.
Yeah, he was definitely a tactician that had the respect of everybody on the field. I didn't know how he'd be with a larger role as a manager, but I thought you heard people say he just as a teacher was extraordinary.
And you see the turnaround that's happened down there in Texas. The first 2 years were a little rough. He was on the bubble for a while. They thought about replacing him when Nolan Ryan first came in to be the GM there, but Nolan Ryan has seen him through, and I think they probably couldn't be happier with Wash at this point.
You see what happened with Josh Hamilton last night?
Yeah, came back and went homer on the first at bat.
Yeah,
They've had a slew of injuries. They've got their bats back. They might just run away with this thing.
they could.
And that's what's so depressing, I think, is that I look at the opportunity of what the A's have had here in the first 2 months of the season. With their pitching is almost half a percentage better than anybody in the entire American League. They have a 2.9 pitching staff ERA, and the next best is the Angels at 3.35, I believe. And that's such a huge margin, and they've done so well that it just shows how anemic their offense has been.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, I don't know how you blame Bob Geren for their inability to hit the ball, especially hit the ball out of the park, which they haven't been able to do since Frank Thomas and Swish and Bradley left the team. They just haven't had that. It's been a horribly painful thing to watch. But on the other hand, there is the use of the players, and you wonder, I don't know how much of this is just the frustration of A's fans, how much is the frustration of the team looking at that wonderful talent of pitching and the inability to slug the ball. That does that unfairly criticize Garen or unfairly hold him responsible? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's unfair at all. I think it's a very fair criticism. I mean, based on what you just said and what I've read, um, I, I'm surprised there isn't more in the popular press and in the mainstream press.
Well, I think unfortunately it's a sign of who the A's have become. That comment I made earlier about them becoming a bit of a wasteland. They used to be talked about as kind of the fun, funky little team, right? The little low budget, lovable group. I think now they're very much an afterthought. I think now that people are adding it all up, that Lou Wolf has been here, his good karma as owner has seemed to pass because they haven't been able to get the stadium deal they wanted. They're in a quagmire in San Jose, can't get that done. Uh, the Coliseum is unsuitable by everyone's means for the team, and therefore they can't get the revenue to get the bats. It's like this unending cycle. And I just don't, there's got to be a break point somewhere. Someone has to pay the price for this at some point. I know the fans are turning out lower numbers than even usual, and that was low to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. it sounds like, I mean, you've been through this scenario so many times with so many teams, and you don't always know what the problem is, but you know that the answer is certainly easier to get rid of the manager than it is to get rid of 5 or 6 players.
At the very least, there's a potential change of culture with the change of a manager, and frankly, I don't see what the team's holding on to with him besides the relationship. And like you said, that could be Bean's Achilles heel. Because if he can't make that decision, that tough decision, knowing that there is decent talent in a lot of ways and talent that can not only be used but perhaps be used indirectly to go get bats at this critical juncture right now, this is when people start looking to flip. This is when Bean's been able to pull his magic. If he,
Yeah.
if he can't, make a culture change at this point, I don't know what the long-term effects are. They might be very long.
Yeah, he was willing to get rid of some pretty popular players. So when they thought the time was right,
Right.
that was no problem for him.
And so, why not make this move to again, reinstate his will? And there's been a lot of talk actually that Billy Bean has been more standoff than he was the first 10 years or so in the last 2 to 3 that he hasn't. I don't know if it's because people have gotten wise to him or because he's gotten more distracted. People talk about his work with the soccer team that he's been working on, his other great passion and interest apparently. But apparently he seems to me to be a lot less hands-on than he used to be.
Yeah, the results just are not there for what, and you can guess at all the reasons, but you're not there on a daily basis, and you don't know.
Right. And this is obviously this is all speculation. It's just a fan's perspective, and we can only talk about the results, and the results are there in the wins and losses. But the wins and losses are one thing. It's the culture and climate. That's the part that bothers me. Wins and losses, as long as there's due diligence and effort being put forth, and then I can go along for that ride. When there seems to be a culture or climate problem, which is what I read now, which is what I seem to see now, that's more troubling to me.
Yeah, and again, that points to the manager.
I think so. I think so. All right. So there's our summary for now. It appears we're both on the side of letting Bob Geren go sooner than later.
Does he make it through the All-Star break?
I would say not. If Billy's going to make his move, he has in the past done it in June. So that's not just for him, but I think it could come part as players. This is when teams look to make those moves. So it's an opportunity-based thing. I don't know whom he would be looking to replace him with. People have talked about Kurt Young as one possibility. I've always been a fan. So does he stay in-house, or is there another name out there that's interesting right now? So perhaps some more research on that. We could take a look.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the talk, Dad.
Thank you.
I love you, and we'll do this again soon.
Look forward to it. Love you too.
Good job, Dad.
Same to you.